Welcome to the Movies of the Damn podcast. My name is Kyle Grant, and I'm sitting here with my friend and published horror author, John Hunt. If you enjoy what you hear here today, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, check out our Facebook page, and follow us on both Instagram and Twitter, at Damned Movies. Email us any questions, comments, and suggestions to moviesofthedamned@gmail.com. For further details on John's published works, please visit his blog, johnhuntfiction.wordpress.com. Today, we'll be discussing Scott Derrickson's 2012 film, Sinister. True crime writer Ellison Oswalt, played by Ethan Hawke, moves his family into a house where a family was murdered, with the plan to use the case for his new book. Ellison soon finds a box in the attic containing a projector and several reels labeled as home movies. However, Ellison soon discovers they are actually footage of families being murdered from across the country. Through investigation, it's learned that in every case, a child from each family went missing following the murders. After experiencing strange events and learning that a symbol in the film represents a demon who would kill entire families and then take one of their children in order to consume their soul, Ellison burns the films and the projector. Ellison then moves his family back to their old house. Soon after, though, Ellison discovers the unharmed projector and reels in his attic and learns that in each murder case, the family moved from the previous crime scene into a new residence. That night, after noticing a green liquid mixed in with his coffee, Ellison passes out and wakes up bound with his wife and son by his side. The movie then ends as his daughter Ashley murders the entire family and is taken away by the demon. John, opening thoughts on the movie?
Yeah, so this is another Blumhouse production. And I'm curious, have you seen a Blumhouse production movie that you detested or disliked? Like, maybe some were better, obviously some are better than others, but like, have you watched one and was, like, oh, that was terrible, or I can't believe they did that, or anything like that?
Well, you kind of took the words out of my mouth a little bit. That I can't think of one that I detested, but some are obviously better than others.
Yeah.
I would say that the Conjuring series, kind of Insidious, kind of Sinister, those are some of the better ones. Annabelle was okay.
Yeah.
But it wasn't bad.
Yeah.
The Nun was okay, wasn't bad.
Yeah.
But no, I can't think of one just off the top of my head that I absolutely hated. You're absolutely right.
And that's incredible to me. It's like they're focusing on the product, and if you're always focusing on the product, you're gonna build an audience base. You're gonna grow that audience. And if I see a movie and I might not like a trailer for a movie, and I might not like the premise at all, or I might dislike something that I saw on the trailer, and I was like, I don't want to watch that. I have no interest in that. But then at the end it says Blumhouse Productions. I'll probably go watch it.
And you're absolutely right. So every time I hear of a new film coming out from Blumhouse, I'm excited. And then conversely, you can say the opposite is true for another company that I brought up in a previous podcast, Spectre Vision, the one who did Mandy and that A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night or whatever it's called. So you're absolutely right. If I see a movie coming out and it has Blumhouse attached to it, I'm in. If I see it has Spectre Vision attached to it, I'm probably steering clear.
And it's weird, right? Because you don't really think of it in terms of who produced the movie or the production company, right? You think of who's acting.
Used to.
Yeah. Who's acting, and
if the trailer grabs you, who the director is, all that sort of stuff.
all that stuff, right? But not the production company. But in this instance, I'm behind the production company. I think they're doing a great job.
You're absolutely right. I can't disagree with that. I can only echo those words.
Okay, well let's get back to the movie. So, the whole part this movie I thought was amazing, and I don't know if you agree with me on that, but I just like the build of it. So the very beginning was like with the hanging family and the way the branch came, like
hit the ground running, right? That is the opening visual.
Yeah, it was just to me it was like I got punched in the gut, right? It was just like that's the first thing you see. Like, something. This is something.
And then seeing them kind of struggling from the branch. Yeah, it's awful, right? But you're like, well, let's see where this is going.
Yeah, for sure. And then, you get introduced to the main character, and Ellison, who's played by Ethan Hawke. And I like Ethan Hawke. I've always liked him from Dead Poet Society back then. And so I enjoy watching him and how I think he's a great actor. And then you have him moving the family into this place, and bad things are going to happen to him just because of his actual character. He's not very ethical, and he lies by omission. His wife asks him questions, and he kind of does a redirect or an around it, and then he'll say later on, well, you didn't want to know.
Yeah, I think it was something like he answered it truthfully, but he was like, it was a definite like redirect white lie. Like she asked, like, "Are we living near?"
Yeah, two houses away from a murder scene. He's like, "No, we're not."
And then in the back, and then we all know, no, you're actually living in the house.
You're
right?
in that actual house. Yes.
Yeah.
So like he knows she wanted to know, but at the same time didn't want to know, because she did say right after, "I don't want to know." But I think he knows as well that she would want to know if they were actually in the real house.
I'd want to know so I could immediately leave.
Yes. I wouldn't be very fond of that. It just depends on how good of a deal you got on the house.
I guess, yeah. Like, and like, can we make a broker a little bit of a good faith deal with these demons and ghosts, right? Like,
well, you don't know about the whole demon.
Yeah, of course.
Thing.
I'm
like
just kidding around,
right? So it's just.
But you're right. It was a good start to the film, and one of the scenes that I thought that was very important right off the bat, and it was kind of right near the conversation we were just talking about with his wife, is when that first police officer showed up.
Yeah.
And it to me was really important because, again, you learn from his character, you learn a little bit about his backstory, that he's writing these books that don't always make the police look that good, and so you could tell right away he is at this alone. Anything bad that happens to him, the police might not be there to help him out. So I thought that was important for the rest of the movie.
Yes, I agree. That was I think that was the reason for the setup. But you also learned a secondary part of his character that maybe when he's writing these stories, he's not really after the truth. He's more after the sensational aspect of it.
And he doesn't care who it hurts.
No.
Like his wife, I can't remember if it was near the beginning or sometime in the movie, she brings up the fact, I'd love to be able to live somewhere where I didn't get pulled over for going the speed limit and getting a traffic ticket.
Yeah.
Like if you were putting your family in a position like that, it might be time to really reevaluate what you're doing with your life.
What your priorities are, right?
And constantly moving your kids to new schools, to new houses. Like,
because he can't do a teaching job. That's what he said.
Yeah,
right?
he can't write textbooks.
Yeah.
How could I possibly do that to support this family? I got to leave a legacy. I think he actually says that
he
at one
does
point
say
in the movie.
legacy. Yeah, he does.
And so it kind of, I didn't find myself that I was rooting against Ethan Hawke's character Ellison at any point, but he might not have also been the most lovable guy. And
it was one of those things is where like he was the author of his own misfortune, right? So it's just like he did things and he made decisions and he kept things close to the vest for purely selfish reasons, and those because he kept a close guarded secret of all the information that he had learned, it came to bite him in the ass later on, right? It grew and built, and because he was so secretive, and if he shared that earlier, like if he shared those videos at the very beginning with the police, they would have been taken from him, and then that would be the end of it. That would have been the end of it. Right, so once again, it's a movie, so that's obviously not how they wrote the thing. But I think it was important that they illustrated that part of his character, that he was more concerned about his own happiness and his own
success.
Yeah, or his view of how other people saw him, or how other people measured his success.
And I agree with what you just said. I don't see him keeping those videotapes though as a bad decision, just because they did a really good job of playing up the fact that his career was struggling. Money was tight. It had been so long since his kind of, from what I saw in the film, his kind of one big book that he's like, and you saw him, he was on the phone calling the police, and he's just like, you could tell in his head he's thinking, he's like,
well, he looked at that book on the shelf there, right?
Yeah, and he's like, no, I have to do this, right?
Yeah, Kentucky Blood or whatever it was.
And so I get that. So I don't see that as the kind of the dumb decision, especially since at that point he didn't know that there was any sort of like ghost, demon, supernatural thing going on. He just thought he had stumbled upon clues to murders, right? Which again,
he thought he was going to unearth a serial killer.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
And so I get the temptation there. I really, really do, especially with the spot that he was in. So I don't see it being that dumb decision. And I also kind of disagree with the fact that if he had given away the tapes right away, that everything would have been good. Because they kind of mentioned that once you watch it, that portal is opened a little bit. And as you saw, when he did trying to destroy them, they came back to him anyways. So
into the new house.
Yeah, so I don't know exactly how it would have ran, but I'm not sure if that would have solved everything. It seemed like the rule was once you watched it, you're screwed.
I don't even know if that's they kind of intimated that, but then but there was a building portion to it, right?
Well, because I think the building portion is that once you watch it, and this is just me kind of watching the movie and thinking about it, is that once you watch it, it kind of opens that portal for the demon. I think the kids called him Mr. Boogie or something like that.
Mr. Boogie and then the professor called it Bagul.
Exactly. So it opens that portal, and then the build is that Mr. Boogie or Boogle or whatever you want to call him has to kind of form that relationship with the one child and kind of slowly, as we see in all sorts of possession movies, slowly take them over, convince them to do his bidding, right?
I don't even know. I think that was almost at the very beginning. At the very beginning, that was set up. So what I think the build was actually, because I was thinking about this afterwards as well, or actually when I was watching, I was like, oh, that's very clever. So once he watched the video and that portal is open, let's say the portal's open, and we'll agree on that point. Mr. Boogie's main job is to scare him so bad that he leaves that house. Because it's not the whole ritual is not completed until they leave and they go into a new home. And at the very beginning, the daughter was painting on the wall in the room and said, "Do you promise we'll leave if I don't like it here?" At the very beginning.
Oh, yeah. I missed that. But it's coming back to me now.
And then when the police stopped them later on, he said, "Yeah, we're leaving him. We're never coming back." And then the daughter in the back seat was like, "Just like you promised, Daddy." And he was like, "Yes."
Yeah.
Right. So there's a tie-in from the very beginning. So I thought, to me, it could be, you could see it two ways, right? You could see it as, he had to get into the daughter's head and control her or whatever, or that was already done. And the whole purpose of that afterwards was to scare the family enough to have them leave to complete the ritual.
Because it was important for them to move to a new house, because if he just kept killing the same family in the same house, eventually no one's going to move in there anymore, right?
Yes.
And so I get it. So that makes sense that they had to kind of move houses. Now, to just switch gears for a second, the home movies.
Mm-hmm.
I love the way that those were presented.
Oh
I love the fact that it wasn't just...
I love the titles of them.
Yeah, just ridiculous.
Pool
right?
party?
Yeah.
Right? Barbecue?
But I love the fact that it wasn't like he didn't just clip them on and then it was just straight murder.
Yeah.
I love that it kind of contrasted the family being happy and then the murders. I love that they had both those things,
right?
They
had someone filming from afar, always.
Yeah.
Always someone filming from afar and watching this family, right? And then the murder.
Yeah,
right?
But I kind of like that contrast, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, because I thought that it worked better, again, than just he flicks it on and a murder happens.
Yeah, well, of course, right? So you want to be drawn in, right? So in order to create empathy with any type of character, you're going to have to watch the family, right? So, or know who the family is, or be aware that they existed. So the purpose of, having the filming beforehand and showing these families, having a good time at the lake or whatever the case may be, is to show that, hey, look, they're real, they loved each other, and they were good people, and then boom, then you get murdered. So you have to be drawn in that way, otherwise there's no empathy, right? So I think it served two purposes that way. One is just to draw the audience in and to draw the actual character in.
Yeah, so it had kind of like that double intent there, and I thought they pulled it off really well. And I thought that just with this premise and with everything going on, it just led to so many cool shots throughout the entire movie. Now,
the murders were brutal. Like, they were absolutely brutal.
Oh, yeah,
these families, right? So I for me, I thought that was also a great device, right? To show...
Well, it makes you cringe because just almost right away, this is likely going to happen to Ethan Hawke and his family.
Yes, it ups the suspense. But, they always... So it's interesting. I like how this whole movie was done that way, because it's just like, so normally, you go to a possession movie or a haunted house, right? And the family, this has all the earmarks of the other ones, right? They move to a new house. They don't have a lot of money. Conjuring, right? They didn't have a lot of money. They couldn't leave. Blah blah blah, right? Amityville Horror, same thing. All this type of stuff. So the family moves in there and they feel trapped because they can't just leave because of the money purposes, right? So you had the same thing there, right? But but they also did this in The Conjuring. But it was also, so when they finally made the decision, we're getting out of here, we're leaving. Normally that's the end of it, right? Normally that's cool. The family made a good decision, perfect. But the whole purpose of this was to get them to leave so that he could kill them.
Yeah.
Right?
So there's a kind of like that. He's trying to push them towards like making what you would normally say is the good decision, but in this
Yes.
case, it's the bad decision.
Yes.
No, I didn't even think of it that way. That's interesting.
It's a very interesting twist on the regular formula, right? So, and that's why I think Blumhouse is really quite amazing. Like I knew,
Keeps you guessing.
yeah, I knew at the beginning one of the kids are gonna kill them, right? And they kind of they didn't keep that a secret, right? The missing child, are we missing? You know,
See, I didn't know that. Like, I knew that his plan was to abduct one of the children and kill the family, but I didn't know if the demon did that himself or if he had the child. I didn't know for sure it was going to be a child who did it.
well, okay, that I would say it was building up that way. Maybe you didn't know it, but I thought at the very beginning, the child was involved. I knew because the premise of the movie was sort of a possession type movie, or
But you didn't know which child either.
no, you didn't know. That's what I was just about to talk about. So they kind of did the whole red herring thing, right? With the boy having the night terrors
And the sleepwalking and
Yeah.
waking up different places.
but at the same time, they made it clever with that as well because they said, this hasn't happened in a while. So it has happened before. Before they moved there, he was having the night terrors. So you couldn't really directly tie Mr. Boogie to that kid, but it made you think, okay, but now he's having them because of these issues, so maybe it is tied, right? So it's very interesting how you didn't know which child would have been affected at the time,
No,
right?
you're absolutely right. And as I was kind of saying, that the premise of this movie and kind of the setup, it led to so many cool shots. Now, I don't know if you remember the one. It's kind of late at night, and he's kind of watching the home movies on his laptop. He's converted them over to his laptop, and he gets the call from, and I love this, Deputy so-and-so.
Yeah.
I love that. It just shows how pompous Ethan Hawke's character is.
He's
Like,
definitely.
I'm not even
yeah.
going to learn your name. I'm going to call you Deputy so-and-so.
Yeah.
Not just for my case, but to your face.
Yeah,
right?
I know.
But anyway, he's kind of on the phone with them, and he's kind of chatting with them, and over his shoulder, you can see the laptop, and you see Mr. Boogie move on the
Yeah.
laptop, and I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, right?
Yeah.
Another cool scene when he has that kind of confrontation outside with the dog,
Mm-hmm.
and then you see the kids appear behind him.
Yes.
Like, I just like a lot of cool things like that. It's one of those movies where you have to watch, or you kind of miss those kind of really cool shots like that.
Yes. So what I thought, so at the very, you kind of knew the kids were involved, right? And you knew they were the killers. At some point along the movie, you knew that, right? So, but I was watching it and I was thinking, you know what would have been a little cool if they didn't show the kids. Like you just said, that was a good scene, right? And but I think it could have been better to not show the kids because then you could kind of lead the audience to think it's only Mr. Boogie that's doing the murders, and then at the very end, it's the daughter that comes in. So you could leave little breadcrumbs to build up that the potentiality for the child to be the murderer is there, but then, and that would be kind of like the big reveal at the end. But during it, all you think is it's Mr. Boogie doing this.
Oh,
right?
I see what you're saying. But then again, too, they had that kind of expert, the professor or whatever. And I wanted to ask you about that. How did you feel about that? It's just like as soon as Deputy so-and-so hears that there's some paranormal stuff, oh, you should talk to this expert who's going to know everything about this situation. How did you feel about that?
I didn't have a problem with that, only because if you could see, at the very beginning, they had Deputy so-and-so interested in books. Right, so he wanted to get
Interested in getting a shout out.
Yeah, right. They do all type of stuff. So it's he was holding a book he's reading, and I find typically people that read kind of and officers that are or not officers. Just people in general that read or whatever. They kind of branch off into things that they're interested in, right? So if he's a cop, he's probably interested in murder and weird stuff, right? So he might know that, but they did explain that he was aware of him from another case. So,
or he recognized the symbol or something like that.
Yeah, there's something. Yeah, so it's something that was tied directly to it that I didn't have a problem with him having knowledge of it. I did like the professor though, Vincent D'Onofrio, man. He's awesome. I like him. He's such a good actor.
Yeah, he did a good job. And now that you bring up the acting, I thought Ethan Hawke did an amazing job acting.
He always does a good job.
Especially as the movie went and you saw kind of like the alcoholism kind of start to get cranked up and then the crumbling mental health.
Yeah.
I thought he did such a great job with that.
The way the way he showed his own mental deterioration was phenomenal. Right? Like just the way his reactions to some of the films that he saw, the fight that he had with his wife, it was very revealing. And he did a great job with it. And it seemed very real. Like these two people were having a big fight, and it didn't seem, it's like she's going at him, and then he explodes. Like, that seems very real, right?
Oh,
So
very well acted.
yeah,
Very well written, right?
yeah,
Because the character was well written to kind of represent his arc, so to say, and then also his decision making. I thought was very, very good. I love the fact. I personally love that he packed up and left. I thought that was a smart decision, but I also love that you brought up that it was actually the dumb decision, right?
Yeah.
But I had absolutely no problem with that.
But you had no way to know that.
No,
way.
absolutely
Yeah.
no way to know it.
Yeah.
Two things I
Well,
want.
you kind of the reason why you don't feel cheated about that is because the families were murdered in different houses every time. So there had to be an explanation for that. It's just there's no way to actually guess that explanation, but at the same time, like that it would complete the ritual.
Yeah, but it's a reasonable thing to do, right? Like
all I'm saying is that that's why you didn't feel cheated.
Oh yeah,
because it's reasonable.
Because he's so freaked out after watching those movies, experiencing paranormal stuff himself,
and that's what you want them to do, right? Okay, this is unnatural. This is not right. My family's in danger. I'm finally gonna put aside my own ego and my own interests, and I'm getting the hell out of here, and I'm taking my family with me. And so the audience is like, yeah, man, about damn time. It's a good thing where you get behind them. Right.
And I also love the fact too that they didn't pack their own stuff up. That there was a line in the car, "Oh, we'll send the moving company tomorrow," because then it made sense why the box with the projector in the films appeared, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it would have reappeared within that house before the movers got there. Movers would have packed it up and moved it, right?
Yeah.
I might have almost had a little bit of a problem if they had packed their own stuff and then suddenly Mr. Boogie knew exactly where to have the cassettes in the box appear. Are you feeling with what I'm saying there?
I don't know. I think it's a supernatural thing. Mr. Boogie was attached to the daughter, so he would have been wherever the family was. Right? They could have moved anywhere, and they could have moved to Fiji, and he would have shown up there and thrown the.
No, fair enough.
Thrown the box there. So I don't know about that part.
So two things I wanted to ask you, and the first one here, obviously, I know your answer. I personally didn't see it coming that the child in each family was going to be the murderer. I thought that they were just getting abducted. So I thought it was I thought that was a bit of a twist that it ended up being a kid doing it. But you said you kind of saw that coming from the start, so it wasn't so much a twist for you.
No, I wouldn't say that I was 100% certain, but I had a strong inkling that was the way it was going.
Okay, so
especially from the beginning, and then when you see the kids, right? When you see the kids, in the hallways with their faces, because if you notice their faces, they were painted like Mr. Boogie.
Yeah, but I knew they were abducted. I didn't know they were murderers.
No, but their faces were painted like Mr. Boogie. So you know what I mean? Like it's kind of a symbolic way to show that they're acting on his behalf.
Okay.
Right. So to me, anyways, that's what I saw. So I was just like, okay, well.
So it didn't catch you off guard like it did with me. And then the second thing I wanted to ask you about, after watching this movie, and again, I'm just talking about this one. There's obviously a sequel to this that we could do another time, but we're just talking about Sinister. I had the feeling with this movie, it was impossible to win. Yes. How did you feel about that?
Yes, you couldn't win.
And so, do you have an issue with that or no? No, and that's perfectly fine, right? You don't need to have a potential route to safety for the main character and his family.
It's one of those things where it could be possible. Like, it could have written where while the daughter was hacking up the other family members, Ethan was rubbing his tape against the brick on the fireplace and gets out and was able to stop her from killing him or do whatever. You could have done that.
And then there's a flash forward where 15 years down the road he has a new family and the cassettes appear again. Dun, dun, dun.
Well, you know what I mean? Like, the potentiality was there, and you could also not feel cheated. You could write it in a way to not feel cheated. But I liked it that they didn't win. And I liked it that the window for their winning was so narrow.
Oh, yeah. I have no problem with unhappy endings. Like, horror movies have unhappy endings all the time. I'm just like, it seemed like it was like there was no possible way for them to kind of win or escape. You kind of just described one, but I don't even know how that would have gone. What, he would have had to have killed his daughter at that point, right? Like,
who knows?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Who knows?
But I guess there was the thing. And one thing I'm a sucker for always, I loved the jump scare at the end. Yeah. Where he appears on this. I'm just such a sucker for that, and it's happened so many times, right?
I thought it was cheap.
Yeah, well, you know what? It had me, right? So keep doing that stuff. This movie did okay with critics. 64 on Rotten Tomatoes critic score. Audience score 61.
That's interesting.
Yeah, what do you think that is? Because I thought this was a very good film.
I thought it was a great film.
I'd be in the 80s.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I'd be 80, 85 for sure.
I know, and then again, impossible question here, but if you can kind of like almost pull yourself out a little bit and make yourself a little impartial, can you see what a good chunk of critics in the audience wouldn't have liked?
I think, this is just me spitballing. I think that because the murders were they were very harsh,
Involving children,
and just the visuals of themselves were very brutal. They're not like a Jason murder or a Michael Myers murder, right, where it's a knife in the throat and off he goes, right, or he struggles with someone and crushes their head, or whatever the case may be, right? This is the planned murder of a family, and they don't die well, right?
and you know what's coming too.
You know what's coming, and they do a build up, and when they pull the family strapped to chairs into a pool, like they're awake and they're moving.
Oh,
like that's a terrible.
That's horrendous.
That's horrendous, right? So I can see people turning it off for that. I can see some people doing that, going, okay, well, this is not what I signed up for. So that's the only thing I could think that maybe they thought it was a little too brutal. Because I don't see. It'd be interesting to know if
it wasn't exceptional gore.
No, there wasn't the gore. It was just the quality of the murders, right? So
and it leaves a lasting image with you.
For sure, right? Like when that branch went down and their feet were kicking, like, oh my God, right? And then you see that when they show the full video near the end.
Oh, the extended version.
Yeah, right? And then the little girl's pulling on her dad's leg while he's hanging. Like, it's
awful. It's awful.
It's awful, right? So it's just like, it's a little, I think sometimes you can go a little too far. I don't think they did, but I think if you're looking at a huge portion of the audience, I think a lot of them that aren't hardcore horror lovers would be turned off.
And you could be right. It's just really tough for me when I look at a product that's so well written, so well directed, so well acted, and just to only be in the 60s, which again is certified fresh.
Yeah,
it's.
I don't see that. Because I don't see any plot holes. I don't really see too many plot holes. There might be.
If there were, we missed them.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely missed them, and might be worth another look. Or if anyone here wants to let us know if they noticed any plot holes, I'd like to know.
There's people who are screaming right now, you two are idiots. This movie sucked because of this, and this. Let us know. Tell us about it, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But it killed it at the box office.
Yeah.
This movie was made for $3 million and ended up bringing in over $87 million. That's return on investment. And again, as I've already brought up at the podcast, it's turned into a franchise. They made a second one.
Yeah.
So this is why horror movies exist, because generally you can make these things for pretty cheap.
Yeah.
And even if you make 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 out of 10 that end up being flops, the 2 that end up making it far outweigh all those ones that didn't work.
This
right?
is the thing that we were talking about with Blumhouse. Like they seem to concentrate on the product. Like they focus on the product, so they're not going to put out. Like I don't see them putting out crap. No, right?
But John,
yeah.
$3 million. I know $3 million is a lot of money, but in filming production, that's not.
No, I know.
And it just didn't feel cheap at any moment, right?
No.
It didn't feel like a low budget film or anything like that. So,
everyone acted really well. Like the kids acted well, his wife acted well, he acted well. Like it was all good. It was all good.
No, I completely agree with you. Now, one tidbit that I found about this movie that I thought was really interesting, and I want to get your opinion on it with you being a writer, not a screenwriter, but with writing your books. So, one of the screenplay writers of this movie, C. Robert Cargill, said that his inspiration for Sinister came from a nightmare that he experienced after watching the film The Ring. Another good movie we might have to do on this podcast, in which he discovered a film in the attic depicting the hanging of an entire family.
Oh.
So he's claiming that he had a nightmare of kind of the opening scene of this movie.
Yeah.
And that was kind of his inspiration for this. Because it literally, that is kind of, if you had to describe this movie in like a sentence or two, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Man discover film in attic about murders.
Yep.
And the entire premise for this came to him in a dream.
Mm-hmm.
Has something like that ever happened to you for any of your books?
My books always start off as just like, not as a nightmare, but like just as a scene in my head. Like I'll just be
so kind of like that.
Yeah, but it's exactly, it seems to be around the time when your brain's not focused on anything. You know what I mean? Where it's kind of like in a free flow. You know that part like just before you fall asleep and
Yeah.
you kind of relax, whatever. That's when they seem to come to me, and then I'll come out of it and I'll tap in my phone the idea, and then in the morning I'll look at it and go, oh my god, that's a terrible idea, or I can work with this, right? So that's how it seems to work for me. Or like in just when my brain's floating, like sometimes when I'm at work and I'm typing something and it's just routine and boring, your brain's kind of floating and another image will come to my head, and that's a whole other book, right?
And it's just so wild to me, not being an author myself, how it's just like that one little idea can spawn an entire movie or spawn an entire book. I just think that that's so cool.
It's a lot of fun, that's for sure. I really enjoy the process.
Amazing. Well, buddy, anything else to add about this one?
Nope.
Well, folks, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out our Facebook page and follow us on both Twitter and Instagram @DamnMovies. We want to hear what you thought of today's podcast and any suggestions you have, especially in terms of what movies you'd like us to discuss next. Send us an email to moviesofthedamned@gmail.com. Please also check out John's full-length novels. His first 2 novels, Dollhouse and The Tracker, are Amazon bestsellers, and his new novella, Balance, is also available on Amazon. You can also pre-order John's newest full-length novel, Off the Grid, right now at blackrosewriting.com. For further details on John's other published works, please visit his blog, johnhuntfiction.wordpress.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, so for my book, the pre-order, if you type in the promo code preorder 2019, you'll get 15% off. So it's well worth it, I think, for the 15% off. And my book. Anyways, have a great week, and be kind to everyone.